Y'all are kind of quiet.
We're hungry. No. Mimi's not gonna know.
I have proof.
Okay, maybe you should.
Say hi, Nancy. You better say this is Chandler Mohammed, because you'll end up with lots of types of face.
I know, that's like David. He was so happy to have the twins. I've got two babies, and he just set it up like if they're what's the playpen? It's just an hour's worth of them in the playpen. And you can hear him laughing.
Wait, are you calling in the truck? What about his mom? How about his mom?
Let's go.
You, what, 17, 16?
18.
18.
Yes.
But I go back to the 30s and 40s. I was a young boy growing up here in Mississippi, having been born in December of 1930. So you see, when Roosevelt came into office, President Roosevelt, in 1932, I was still 1 year old. But I caught the tail end of the Roosevelt. He stayed in so long, you know. He stayed in for 12 years and was elected for 16, but died. So he did not die until 1945, which means that now I'm 14 years old, so I saw quite a bit. What we saw was a gradual change, not so much in the attitudes, but the economics of the South. The WPA and the work program, the Social Security program came into being, and it kept a lot of people from, in effect, starving as they got into these things. But remember, that was the period of the great sharecropping. There was no longer slavery, but there was sharecropping. So the sharecroppers' kids grew up on the farm or the plantation or what have you. And therefore, there was a big difference in the exposure that young people had who were sharecroppers' kids and the plantation owners' children. So as a result, there was never the closing of that gap. So even now, we still have a difference in the exposure of people, the culture, and so forth. So as a result, people such as your parents and their parents decided that it would be better to have a private institution where you did not get pulled down by people who didn't have the same culture that you had. And we still have that in Pillar and some others, Kruger and Chula Kruger. But in some of the southern counties, like where I'm from in Lawrence County, we don't have any private academies. We only have a public school system. 1 high school, 1 middle school, 3 elementary. And that is done easier down there because whites are not in the minority as they are in some of the counties here. See, blacks in my county, in Lawrence County, are only about 33%. In LeFleur County, blacks are about 62% or something like that. And that makes for a more gradual change because of the cultural differences and the educational differences and other kinds of things. But let's look at the positive sides that have come about. We have more black elected officials than we've ever had in the state of Mississippi. In fact, if you check it out, we probably have more black elected officials than any other state, bar none. But that's only part of the game. As we look at what happens, there's been very little in terms of the economic control shifted as you got more blacks in leadership roles. They still don't control the economy of the area. Very, very few blacks are in banking or even on the boards of banks or insurance companies or plants or factories. Yazoo Valley Oil Mill is not African American at all on their board or anything. It's a cooperative. The Mississippi Chemical down in Yazoo City. This is where large sums of money is made in business, in industry, banking, finance, investments, and so on. I've been very fortunate in that I have gotten on the advisory board of one of the banks in the area. I'm on a statewide board of an insurance company. And so I've seen some change. It'll take a while, though, before that change reaches a large number of people. I've seen the scout troops, some of them get together. I've seen the jobs that used to never be held by young black men and women now being held by them. So there is a great deal of progress, but there's still a good bit to be done. I don't know if I'm telling you the kind of things you want to know. If you have specific questions, maybe you might.
What do you think about the Malcolm X movement? Were you around?
What did you think about Malcolm X? What did you think about
Well,
him?
Malcolm was a person who was an extremist. See, you can be an extremist in any end. The best people are those who see both sides, but not extreme in either one. Extremists on the right, extremists on the left. I mean, you have people who are extreme like Malcolm X, but you also have on the opposite side, on the right, you have the Ku Klux Klan and the Grand Wizards. So you have one on the left and one on the right. The best people to make progress are those who can meet in the middle.
Yeah.
But Malcolm was way out here on the left, and the Imperial Wizards were way out here on the right. So when you talk about one, you have to talk about both. Extremism is no good for progress, because extremism does not leave room for the people on the opposite end. And the people who are able to come to the middle and work out whatever the problems are. See, you probably don't know about Whitney Young. Whitney Young was a very middle-of-the-road kind of guy, willing to sit down at the corporate table. Vernon Jordan, you probably heard of him only since this Monica Lewinsky thing, but he's been working for years, working with white, black, everybody. And Lester Granger, people you would never hear about because they were not rabble rousers on either extreme. But they worked hard And of course, there were whites who worked hard here in this state all the time and did a good number of things for everybody. So you've had people working, and they were the ones who got things done, and not the ones way out on the right or way out on the left. I mean, Della Beckwith, was way out on the right, and he felt that he was justified in shooting Medgar Evers. Of course, there were people who protected him in that. And on the other hand, you have people like Stokely Carmichael, who was way out on the left. I don't know if he ever killed anybody, but he talked enough stuff, talked about killing people and that kind of thing. The Black Panthers. So you have, the skinheads over here and the Black Panthers over there. The Muslim movement over here and the Klan over there. So we have both. My ideal of a society is to try to not let those people take the lead. Keep those people off in their world. You won't get rid of them. There's not much chance of you just talking them out of their beliefs. People are deep-seated in their beliefs. Quite often they'll die for it. But the more people you can bring to the center and get things done, the better things will be. Now, the ideal is that you do not have to love people necessarily if you can respect them. Respect is more important than love. If you don't know me, though, you can't even respect me.
Yes, sir.
You got to know me, and as long as these extreme people preach to you that you ought to stay separate and don't ever do anything with, then you won't ever get to know me. And if you don't know me, you can't respect me. If you don't respect me, you won't like me.
Did you ever have any encounters growing up with the Ku Klux Klan?
Not directly myself. I've seen crosses burned in other folks' yards and so on. I've not had any encounter with the Ku Klux Klan. I've had people who would, to them they were playing, but to me it was really a travesty. I had a man who sicked his dog on me to see me run and fall down, and he knew the dog wouldn't bite, but you see, I did. And I was a little boy, like 10 years old or something, and was passing in front of his house, and he sicked his dog at me. I remember that very well. And it was all in fun to him. I remember having some cotton at a gin one night, and I was the last bale of cotton to be ginned. And some young white men were running the gin. There was 5 or 6 of them. And they started drinking beer because they were finishing up the night. So when they finished my bale of cotton, because all we had was a bale, I didn't have any big lot of cotton like you have around here. They decided to gather around and said, let's make this boy dance. And, just don't make me dance. By now, I'm about 13 years old, I guess. And they were in their 20s, I would guess. And I don't know what made me think of it, but as they gathered around, I knew I couldn't fight them or anything. So the only thing I could think of was, show me what you want me to do. I'll do it. Well, if they had to dance first, that wasn't going to be any fun. So one of them said, they stopped laughing and said, I'll take this boy home. And he took me his pickup and drove me home. But suppose I got angry and was going to fight, so I probably would have been killed. Because there wouldn't have been anything done about it. They would have said that I threatened them or did something, and that would have been it. And so surviving had a lot to do with your temperament, trying to understand people, and knowing all the time that I would not be in that position the rest of my life. I knew that even as a kid. I just didn't know what I would do, but I knew that my life would be different from that, and that I would grow up and be able to stand up and talk to anybody as a man. But if you were to ask me, how did you plan to get there? I couldn't have told you other than I'm going to school as far as I can go, and hopefully something will happen that makes my life better.
Well, did you know, I don't know, did you know Medgar Evers?
Not personally. I know his brother, Charles, personally,
Yes.
but I was at the funeral for Medgar Evers, so at least I went to they had his body lying state in Washington,
Yes.
and I went there to see his body and that kind of thing. So I was around when he was killed. In fact, I was in graduate school. And I did get a chance to view the body and that kind of thing, but I did not know him. See, I actually left my little hometown in Monticello when I was 15, and I went to high school in Brookhaven. So not as many people knew me in Brookhaven. You know, 15-year-old come into high school from out of town. Who knows me? Well, I played football, and a few more people got to know me. But then I left the state when I was 18, and I never lived or worked in the state of Mississippi for 39 years.
Where were you then?
Well, I went to school and all around the country. I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C. Took a master's degree there. I studied at the University of Oregon, the University of Rochester, New York, University of Louisville in Kentucky, Atlanta University in Atlanta, Northwest Louisiana Tech in Natchitoches, and the Marine Biological Laboratory at Woods Hole, Massachusetts on Cape Cod, and more recently at Harvard in Cambridge. That's my Harvard certificate there.
Yes.
And so I had an opportunity to mix and mingle, to go to France and to Hawaii, Canada, and Mexico, the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, Jamaica. So that gave me a breadth of understanding people and dealing with people that a lot of people may not get coming out of a little town like I came, which is, my town has fewer people than Itta Bena.
Yes.
Itta Bena has about 2,300. Where I'm from has about 1,800 some people. So how many country boys get a chance to go all of those places?
Not very many. Do you live here in Greenwood, or here in Itta Bena?
I live on the campus.
You do?
Right here.
I didn't know.
How long have you been working here?
I'm finishing 10 years here.
10 years.
And you'll be here next year?
No, I'm retiring in the end of June.
What do you plan to do then?
I'm going to move back to New Orleans and write a couple of books and play a little more golf and play with my grandkids. I've been working 43 years. This is my 43rd year of full-time work. And I had a master's degree when I started.
Where did you start before you were here?
I came here from Kansas State University. It's an institution very much like Mississippi State,
I
but
know.
bigger. Mississippi State has about 14,000 and some students. Kansas State has over 20,000. I was the vice president out there. Before, I spent 3 years out there before coming here. Before that, I was at Chicago State. I was a vice president and provost at Chicago State for 6 years before going to Kansas. And then before that, I spent 20 years on the faculty at Dillard University, a small institution down in New Orleans. From 1959 to 79 at Dillard, from 1979 to 85 at Chicago State, 1985 to 88 at Kansas State, and 1988 to 98 at Valley State.
About what age in your life did you feel more comfortable and didn't have to worry about all this civil rights things going on and, just things start to plan
I would
out?
say that as I progressed in terms of education and broadening my experiences, I felt more comfortable probably as I reached the age of late 30s. It was at that time that I got into a lot of things in New Orleans. For example, between the age of 38 and 48, I got on the Board of Trustees of the public television station down in Louisiana. I was on the state Board of Trustees for the Heart Association. I was on the Board of Directors of a hospital, and also on the board of the Urban League, National Conference of Christians and Jews. It brought me in touch with the Lieutenant Governor, the Governor, and all kinds of people. The Mayor of New Orleans, I knew personally. He became a cabinet member in Jimmy Carter's administration. Moon Landrieu, you may have heard the name. His name was Maurice Landrieu, but he used Moon Landrieu. I knew him and his wife personally. And it was at the time of that when I felt that I was accepted as a man here in the Deep South.
Well, what kind of books are you going to write? Do you plan on writing anything on civil rights?
The first book on the desegregation of higher education in the Mississippi Delta. You've heard of the Ayers case. It's been in the paper. That's what I'm going to write the first one about. And the survival of Mississippi Valley State in terms of closure and merger and that kind of thing will be involved. The second book will be more autobiographical about all of the things that I've done, going to school, playing football, waiting tables, all kinds of things, kinds of experiences I've had. That will be the second. I give it a name, From the Farm to the Slums and Beyond. From the farms of Mississippi to the slums of Chicago and beyond. I've been very fortunate. I've not had to pay to go to school from the time I left high school. I've had a chance to go to some of the best schools in the country, mixed with the best people, also some of the worst. And it broadened my life. It gave me a whole different outlook on life to know that basically you and I don't look alike, but we think alike, and we want basically the same thing for our families and our kids and our country.
Yes, sir. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I know your headmaster there very well. We're in the Rotary Club together.
Well, y'all?
Tommy Land.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. I like old Mr. Land. He's all right.
I spoke over at Pillar several years ago. I spoke to the juniors and seniors about 7 years ago. You weren't there, man.
We were real little then.
Yeah. No,